G'day guys, Travis here, Perth Diesel Performance. As you can see, I've got a Mighty 300 series right behind me, and we've got a box here. It's a 300 series DIY dual battery kit. We're going to run through today how to install this in your 300 series, and also we're going to fit the Invicta battery. So without delay, let's jump straight into it. Okay, so we've just opened the box of the battery kit. First of all, you're going to see the stainless steel bracketry, battery tray here. We've got the BC-DC bracket, we've got the BC-DC, all the wiring here, all our solar bracket for the fuses. We've got two auxiliary bags here, one with all the supplementary wiring, and we've got all our fitting kits. The most important part, the instructions. Now, if you want more detail of what's in the kit and the overview of it, we have got a complete video on the kit, how we've manufactured it, and the functionality, and it runs straight through it. But this video is about DIY instructions. So let's open the bag and check the contents to the instructions and get straight into it. Like I said, the instructions are the most important part of the kit. Pull these out, have a read of them. We've got quality pictures and it's easy steps to follow. It's simple. We've made it so anyone can fit this kit at home to a workshop. Everything you need is in the box, step by step. There's a couple of important features, and that's disconnecting the battery, but it notes all that in the instructions, so read it before you start, know what you're doing before you get into the job, have your tools ready, have the car ready, so you don't have any pop-ups, and you'll get your battery kit in way more efficiently and in a quicker time. Okay, so first steps, we're just going to remove the factory trims. It's as easy as just pushing down on the little trim clips, push them down, pull them up. Just make sure you don't lose them. They're a bit like the 10mm socket, because when they drop in the engine bay, you might spend a fair bit of time trying to fish them out down low. Now, to give yourself a bit more room, just going to pop this trim up here and then just pop this up. One more trim clip in the corner, one little trim up in the corner here. This little piece here will pop up, and then you can move this out of the way, leave the seal there, just rest it there lightly, and as you can see, a lot more room to work in here. Now straight away, first thing we're going to disconnect the earth on the battery. Make sure anything electrical work, you're going to isolate any power source. So if you've got a battery in the back or anywhere in the car, isolate the battery, disconnect all the power sources in the vehicle before you conduct any electrical work. We're going to remove the earth strap completely. So I've undone the 10mm here, two 12mm on the Firewall, and we're going to take the earth strap completely out of the vehicle. We have to take it off anyway. Loosen the 10mm off that clamps the terminal in place onto the battery. Give it a light little wiggle. Now we can undo the 12mm that's securing the factory battery down to the factory tray, and then we'll lift the battery out of the vehicle. So we've just undone the two 12mm head bolts that secures the factory battery in place. You can see now it's moving around. So we'll put that on the bench, we'll lift this out of the vehicle, and we'll gain access to remove the factory tray out. Okay, so now the battery's out of the way. The plastic factory tray, you're going to see down here, there's bolts down here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then the plastic tray is going to come out, and then there is two more bolts on the side here. They're going to come out, and we're going to get the factory metal tray out of the vehicle. Okay, so we've got the 5 bolts out that are securing the plastic tray into the factory metal tray. This guy here, out of the vehicle. There is a couple more bolts that are securing the metal tray to the inner guard and the factory bodywork. We've got another bolt here and to the side. We'll take them out now. Okay, so all the bolts are out of the tray. Now we are just going to lift it out of the vehicle. Okay, so just to clarify in this step in the instructions, you'll see the plastic tray. We won't need that, we're discarding that. You've got the factory clamp that retains the factory battery, the 2 bolts that hold that down. We're not going to be reusing that. We've got a plastic trim under the positive terminal, this black trim here. We're going to take that off so we can rotate the battery as a final assembly. We're going to take that off. Also, we've got a main positive cable retainer plastic trim. That's going to come out of the way. And then 2 bolts don't get reused to remount that plastic trim in there. And then also one of the earth link straps that go up to the Firewall here. We're going to upgrade that as well so we get a better earth contact with a longer length bolt. Okay, so now we've got the factory battery tray. I've just got on the bench here, I want to show you. Got the instructions here. Where it's referring to is just along here, which is the Firewall is there. This is towards the front of the vehicle. You're going to see a little lip along here, and also there's a measurement in the instructions. So I'm just showing you so it references to where it is, but pretty much it's really simple and easy. Along here and cut along that. The reason I've decided to trim it, and we've designed it so you do need to trim this bit, and it's the only thing you do need to modify, is I wanted the battery, the whole kit, to fit under the factory trims. I didn't want to have the cover off and make it all look messy. I wanted to look OEM, so this is why we've decided to trim this little piece off, and it serves no purpose. Now we've prepared the engine bay, and the reason we're going inside is to get access to run the cables. The grommet is exposed and it's easy to work with at this point in time. So that's why we're going to go inside. We're going to pull the cables through and over to the Jumpstart function switch, and it's really easy to do right now. So let's go inside and take off some trims. Okay, so we're in the passenger side of the front of the vehicle. Now tip as well, before you disconnect the main battery or the power source, put the driver's seats and the passenger seats all the way back, and if it's got an electric tilt, telescopic steering column, put it out and up, so when you're working over the other side, you've got more room. Just a little tip there. So now it's just a matter of finding the little trim clips. They're just along the bottom here, thumb and forefinger, and you can just push them back, and then the trim is just going to pop down like so. You can disconnect your illumination connector, and there you have it. That trim comes out. These little trim clips along here, you are just pushing them like so, and then it will dislodge and come out, and you can move that out of the vehicle. Okay, so we're back in the engine bay, and we're at the firewall with the grommet where the factory harness goes through. You are going to see these two little dicks here, and you can take these off and feed the cables through them. You can, this one here, you are going to trim it off with scissors. However, it's up to you as the installer. If you feel more confident doing that, that's fine. Obviously here, I can take this grommet out of the firewall quite easily, and I can re-lodge it back in, untape this harness. We are only running one cable, so you will need to put some sealer around it to make sure you don't get water entry into the cab. That's one thing I'll really want to make mention of. Don't cut the boot with a razor blade. Another great little tip as well, these fuse box covers, the tops of them can scratch quite easy if you're moving factory wiring. So I'm going to pull this out of the way, and I'm just going to flex the factory wiring right out of the way, and I'm going to have more room to work through here. Okay, so I've just lightly cut the tape there just to find the end of the tape, and I'm just going to untape the grommet. So now we've untaped the grommet, going to leave the harness still taped up, and you're going to see just lightly I can feed. Don't put any drill bits or anything sharp in here because you've got a main loom. You definitely don't want to damage it. You can see here, I'm just showing you for demonstration purposes. We're going to feed a pull cable through here with a bit of silicone spray, and it's going to come out. I'll just show you behind the grommet in the other side, inside the interior. It's nicely going to come through there. We'll tape this back up, re-tape the loom up, and away you go. All right, always use lube so it slips in easier. Let's get onto it. Okay, so now we're going to open up the Jumpstart loom, the wiring bag here, and we're going to remove out the interior loom for the Jumpstart solenoid. So this is the loom I'm referring to. It's got little zip ties on it holding together, so we can trim those guys off. Now, we are going to feed it from the engine bay side. So this end here is going to get attached now to the pull cable here with some installation tape or something to join the two together to drag it through with a bit of lubricant on it as well, so you don't pull on it, it disconnects, and then you've got to feed it back through again. The reason we're doing it from the engine bay is because you don't want to be trying to get fuses and terminals that we've pre-terminated from the interior cab back out this way. It's much easier to go in that way. Okay, so we pull cable, we're here. We're just going to gently pull it through. If we feel any friction, we're just going to stop and reassess and make sure nothing's caught up. Because like I mentioned, you don't want to damage any OEM factory wiring. It should just come through nice and easy. And there you have it. My pull cable's come through. You can see, I'm not yanking on it or anything like that. I'm just lightly pulling on it. And end result is we're just going to route it through under here and head over towards the driver's side of the vehicle where we're going to fit off the switch. Okay, so in this step, we're going to remove the main positive cable that feeds to the starter motor. We need to remove this plastic trim. We're going to dislodge these clips here. We're going to cut through this tape here, or just unpick it, cut the zip tie off, and away you go. That's dislodged out of there. Then down lower, under the trim under here, there is a little clip. Just going to dislodge it just there. It's just a little spring clip, and once again these just click off here, and if you want to come from behind, or you can just open it up and feed the cable through. Okay, so before we put the tray in the vehicle, we are just going to position the battery link harness and re-tape all the grommet and the firewall, or whichever path you've chosen there. Now down in here, you're going to have a look, and there is a plastic tray. We are going to follow the loom along the factory loom, come up through the factory trim. We're just going to pop that open, put it in there. End result is lengthwise, just going to have enough cable here that we can loop it around. There's enough room to work with. Now the reason why I'm saying a little bit more room to work with, there is a fuse in here. It's pre-fitted in there. It's got electrical dielectric grease in there, so you don't get any water ingression. Make it so that this is a fuse circuit into the cab. You don't want it right at the bottom. You can never get to the fuse. Everything we design and make, we want it sort of serviceable and easy to install and easy to maintain. Put that somewhere where you can get to it if you ever do need to access it. So now we've positioned the cable, all this excess cable here, we're going to put it through to the firewall and get the lengths correct and finalise all the taping and install that grommet like I mentioned earlier. Okay, so lastly you'll see I've taped all the factory loom back up in position. Now particular attention needs to be paid when repositioning the grommet in the firewall. Make sure it is located all the way around and nice and evenly, and you're not getting any water ingression, dust, and it's not going to dislodge. It needs to locate back in where it was. This is something I see on a lot of installations where cables have been pulled through and they haven't checked all the way around the boot that it is lodged properly, or they've been cut, and you won't see it straight away. You'll get water ingression in the cab, dust, and corrosion doesn't happen straight away on wiring. It happens over time and you will end up with a problem. Okay, so now it's time to prep the tray to go into the vehicle. We've got the Jumpstart solenoid right here as well. It does mount on a specific orientation. I'll run you through that. However, here's the mounting hardware for the solenoid. Little dust caps, little nuts for the terminals, also the 2 nuts for the larger studs and 2 nuts and bolts, and that one there is an extra. Okay, so when we're looking at the kit as well, I'm just looking here in the instructions that's around so you can see at your end. This is how it's laid out, same as that. Now the terminals are going to face outwards, so you can see same as the instructions, and it's going to mount there like so. Now you can move this slightly as well when you put the M6s down this way, 2 nuts, and when you connect that on as well, there is an earth strap. That is in the supplementary wiring kit, which is this little guy here. Then make sure you fit that. It's going to go onto the M6, and then it's going to come around and it's going to come onto the switching side of the solenoid for the trigger, and that is the earth circuit. We've got the M6, the 10mm, little nuts and bolts, they go on there. The earth strap's on here. Put the 2 little nuts on there as well, and then the 2 larger ones are going to go on top. When you've finished everything, last of all and terminated, these little dust boots will go on when it's all done. So I'm just going to take them off now because we're going to have to take them off anyway. Just want to run you through that. Okay, so we've got the factory tray that we prepared earlier. We're going to fit that back into the vehicle. Factory tray is going to rest straight back in over the factory mounting holes, and now we're going to pick up the stainless steel tray, and same thing, that is going to go in the vehicle. However, there's a couple of bolts you've got to put in first before you fit this one. Okay, so the factory underneath battery tray is in the metal tray. The bolts that need to be refitted is 1 here, 2 at the back of the guard, 2 on the front of the guard. So it's all just sitting here loosely at the moment. Now, when we put the stainless steel tray in, it's going to use these outer 4 to secure it in place. So now we've located this, we can do this up tight. However, for video purposes, I'll just show you how it all positions in one easy step, and then I'll come back and tighten it all. And the stainless steel tray, so we can put 2 batteries in it now, is all sitting there in situ and nothing's fouling. Okay, so I've just tightened the lower tray, factory one. Just going to lower the stainless steel upgraded tray into position, and it's as easy as that. Okay, so now you can see it's all situated, complete clearance all around here. The battery is retained all the way around, and then there'll be a rubber mat on here. We've got our J hooks, they've got a solid surface to mount to. They're stainless steel 8mm J hooks and no plastic straps. The battery is going to be nice and secure once we fit it into the vehicle. Okay, so next in the instructions, you're going to see a black square inside the battery tray. That is this rubber mat. And now what we've done with that, we've put the rubber mat in the bottom of the stainless steel tray. When you put the battery on that, you do not need to tighten the batteries down, like over tighten them to get the batteries to stop moving around, because we've seen people with batteries over tightening them and damaging casings and things like that. This rubber mat needs to be put in, not right now, it's just in the instructions to show you where it goes, and you can easily see. Now, the batteries, to install them, you slide them in this way, slide the battery over, especially if you're using the lithium battery or a heavy battery. You then lift the battery up, slide this guy under, and that is because this rubber does such a good job. If you put it down now, slide the battery in, you'll have a hard time trying to get it over there because it grips that well. And one tip, don't use silicone spray, because then the rubber mat isn't going to do anything, it's all going to slide around. So now it's time to prepare the SBI solenoid, all the Jumpstart battery wiring, the BC-DC harnesses. So we have all the wiring. We've got the large cables, the two positives here. We've got a main and auxiliary cables. We've got the earth cable, and then also we've got two charge cables that are run from the solenoid all the way down to the BC-DC mount at the front of the car. So we'll get all them prepared and we'll route them, and I'll show you exactly where they mount. Remove this as well for ease of installation. I'm just going to pop this little trim out here, and now this little guy here is going to pop out, just dislodge the clip. Okay, so if you do want to remove that, the little trim clip is down the bottom there as well, so just pop that out. Now you can easily see how I'm going to terminate the SBI solenoid. So you put a little nut on there. Okay, so BC-DC cables, we're going to fit them off onto the solenoid right now. You're going to see straight away there's two eyelet terminals, smaller and larger. The larger ones are what's going to go onto the solenoid. The smaller ones are going to go onto the fuse blocks on the BC-DC bracket. Now, they are marked with an M and an A. What that represents is main battery, auxiliary battery. Okay, so now the main battery Jumpstart cables, the thicker cables of the two, you're going to see they're two different lengths, and then there's one that's got different terminals on it as well. The one with a 90 degree and then there's one with a 45, that is for the main battery, and this guy here is for the auxiliary battery. This one you can't get around the wrong way onto battery or solenoid. Same eyelets, same flat terminals. However, the main battery, it is slightly different. SBI link on this guy here, and the 90 degree terminal goes onto the main battery, the factory post. Yep. Okay, so just to recap where we've mounted everything and the orientation. Like I said, the front stud is the main battery stud. So this is the BC-DC charging cable coming here. This is the main battery, the large thick cable coming over to the factory positive post of the factory battery over here. The back stud is the auxiliary battery. That's the A, the BC-DC charging lead. We've also got the SBI, the fuse pickup here, the 5 amp fuse for our link switch that's running into the cab, mounted on the back to get power off the auxiliary stud. And you're going to see the earth wire is on the other side. This is the trigger for the battery link. And then as well, you'll see down here, we've also got the earth circuit that I mentioned earlier on the install. Final termination, this is all going to come across here. This will go on the auxiliary battery positive stud at the front. This will go onto this positive post, the factory harness, once we've prepped all this and modified it to get the batteries in place. Okay, so next up, we're going to remove the airbox. We've got all the instructions here, and you can follow them. Pretty much under all the hose clamps, all the clips, air filter is going to come out. The airflow meter, pay particular attention that you don't damage any wiring or break any sensors. So we'll get on and we'll take that out now. Okay, so just a 10mm socket. We're going to remove or loosen the hose clamp. Just watch this little washer doesn't dislodge. Okay, so now I've got the airbox lid up. I've got a bit more movement on it, and I can just pull the air housing. Just be careful, this hose clamp here, the little washer doesn't drop off. Once again, airflow meter, this sensor, put it somewhere where it's not going to fall off and break the sensor. Be very careful with that one. Okay, so this is something that's a personal choice if you want to. Obviously, we've got the intake to the engine. If you want to put a rag just to stop anything from going in the intake. We have got the batteries completely disconnected, and before we connect the batteries, that is going to be removed. Don't make the mistake of doing that little trick, putting everything on, connecting it and starting it, because it'll cause more issues than good. But what it is going to stop is any bugs, debris, wiring, anything going in there and causing an issue. So now, air cleaner, going to pull that out. Good time to check that, check serviceability. So now to get the airbox out, you're pretty much just going to lift up in the back corner, front corner, and then just roll out just like that. So you're dislodging the 2 rubber grommets on these little locators here, and then where the airbox foam seals into the inner guard. Okay, so the last piece in this picture that we're going to discard is the earth little cover plate, and it's down behind the passenger headlight and under the front of the airbox. You're literally just going to put a flat blade under there, pull it around, and it comes off. It's just a little trim cover. We don't require that because we are going to use that earth point later in with the wiring when we run the cables through. So you're going to discard that. Okay, so it's time to prepare the BC-DC charger on the stainless steel bracketry, and we've also got the fitting kit and all the hardware and fuses and stuff. So we're going to open this bag and take out the contents and just check we've got everything there to do what we need to do. Obviously, different chargers as well. This kit we're fitting is a 40 amp kit with the lithium battery, so we do have the larger fuses in there. We've got the heat shrink in there as well, all your washers, nuts, bolts. However, for this fuse, the 2 fuses that get mounted on the back of the BC-DC bracket, just got little M4s, Nylox, they're going to mount that guy on there. We've got the BC-DC unit that's going to go onto the stainless steel bracketry. This here, we've got to take some bolts out of the front of the vehicle and the radiator apron there. It's going to be a direct fit. So we're going to bolt the BC-DC to it, fuse holders to it, terminate some cabling on it, and also we are going to, the BC-DC, the programming cables, we've made them and extended them a little bit longer. The reason for that is when it's in the car, it's all finished off. If you do change battery and you need a different charging algorithm, you can then come in here and do as what's needed for the battery, the chemical makeup of what you're running under the bonnet in your 300 series. Okay, so what we've got here, we've got the orange, blue and green. They're the charging profile cables. It's how you configure the charge algorithm that the BC-DC is going to charge the battery at, and that depends on the chemistry of your battery. This vehicle, like I said, is running a lithium, so we're going to set that up for the lithium charge profile, and then we've got some heat shrink here once we've soldered them up and set it up. So you need to set them up depending on what battery you're running. I'm going to heat shrink it down. I'm going to start at one end and go to the other. It has got resin, it is dual wall, so it's got the glue in it, it's going to seal up. When it gets to the end up here, what I do to seal the end is I then hit it with a long nose pliers and flatten it out and glue it together. What that does is it caps the end off nice and neatly and it seals it and it looks really professional. Okay, so it's time to prepare the fuse holders to go onto the back of the BC-DC bracket. Okay, you can see they're grooved together, line them up nicely and they just slide down and then little tap and make sure they're nice and flat, that you're not pulling these little tabs, mounting tabs down and trying to align them because you can break the fuse holder. Now, a point I want to make is when the BC-DC bracket mounts on the vehicle, it is going in this orientation. The fuse holders, I want to have them this way. The reason is these little covers, they've got little boots to hold them on. If they do come undone, there's still gravity's going to cover the positive terminals on them. So that's just something that I prefer to mount them that way. It's up to you what you want to do. Nylock nuts, Phillips head screws. So we're just going to go ahead and mount them onto the bracket now. Okay, so we've got the BC-DC and you can see the slots on the back here, 4 bolt holes on the bracket. We're literally just going to slip them under there, put the bottom one in over here, line it all up, centralise it, make sure it's nice and flush across here. Now, the top outer edge bolt that's going to sit towards the grill at the top, which is this guy right here, the earth is going to attach that. So I'll leave that one to last. I just won't put a nut on it. And I'll go along 10mm socket and a spanner and we'll tighten all that up. Okay, so last bolt on the BC-DC, we're just going to secure the earth in place here. And you'll see the BC-DC or the bracket, stainless steel bracket, sitting on the bench nice and neat. And the cable, this is the programming cables. They're just going to get tucked in behind. You've got your main and auxiliary. We're going to pop them onto the fuse holders here. Now, as well, the cable, you'll see this little cut through here, what we refer to as our little double Ds. Now, a zip tie in the end will go through there and around this cable and then your BC-DC charging cables that head up to the battery come through the front radiator apron, come around here, through the fuses, and we connect these to the BC-DC. And once again, main and auxiliary. You need to marry the main up to the main, the auxiliary, and like I mentioned earlier, fuses, the fuse rating needs to be suitable for your BC-DC that you're running in your vehicle, and away you go. We're going to secure all that, then we're going to go through, mount this on the car. Now, I just want to make a point. The BC-DC charge cables that head back up to the batteries for installation purposes, and we have fitted them off to the solenoid just to show you how all the cables go and how they are routed. However, you can fit them off here and feed them from the front of the car to the back of the car. It's up to you. We just wanted to show you this way because we think people are going to understand it a bit easier at the solenoid for wiring and navigating that. Okay, so when it comes to the fuse holder, you're going to see we've got 4 of these little nuts here as well. I'm going to put the terminals down and then I'm going to put the fuses on top, but I'm not going to put it on just yet because I want to put the other cable under here. The reason that I'm putting the fuse on top is if you do need to change the fuse, if you put it underneath and you neatly secure all the wiring and you can't get it up, makes it much harder to service from a serviceability point of view. So nice and neatly put that down, see, locate it and put it in place, start the threads. Once again, don't drop the 10mm because you'll be fishing it out of the engine bay. So I'm just tightening the earth bolt. Make sure you've got good clean earths. So obviously when this is bolted up, the whole vehicle is at ground as well. So we're going to have a very sound earth circuit as well. Okay, quick recap. Earth's tight. I've put a few extra zip ties on here. I've fed the cable through. I've started the zip tie. Now the other cables, the BC-DC charger cables, are going to come through here. We'll terminate them on the vehicle when we go to fit the bracket, like I mentioned. And pretty much everything like this is neat and tidy and ready to go. This cable is going to get fed through. This is our solar input, and away we go. It's as easy as that. 3 more bolts on the vehicle, terminate the fuse holders, and we're good to go. Okay, BC-DC, front end of the vehicle. Already had the trims off earlier. Unclip the hose. So we're going to unclip this hose here, just going to give us more access. I've already loosened this bolt off as well, but I'm going to run you through how to do that. That one needs to be removed to mount it. Horn bolt here needs to be taken out, and this bolt, 14mm socket, a wobble, long extension. Now, if you come through here, just guiding it through there, and then you can also put on the socket. Okay, so the other 14mm, this guy here, sometimes can be a bit tight too. Just loosen that off. Then we're going to have all of the bolts out, ready to install. Okay, so to finalise BC-DC cables from the Jumpstart solenoid, we've looped them around here. We're just going to rest them along there. They will get zip tied in place. Following the factory looms, we'll go through there. We're then going to jump under this loom through here. There's a lot of clearance in here as well, so it's very easy to navigate through, as you can see. And we've got plenty of room up here with our cables. And before we mount the BC-DC into its location, we're going to fit these off to the fuse holders. Main, auxiliary. Okay, cables, BC-DC, we've got it all resting here. We're going to feed these cables through the zip tie that's going to secure all the cabling. Once again, particular attention to the auxiliary and the main. Just going to lift up the fuse and we are going to locate the auxiliary cable. We've fitted off all the cables to the fuse holders. We're just nipping them up, not swinging on them with any great force. Just nipping them in place. Once again, put the rubber fuse caps back over. Now I've just looped the harnesses over so they're flush with the top of that. They're through the zip tie here as well. The solar lead that we're going to feed through as well, that's zip tied through the back of the double D section with the zip tie. Now, one thing, it doesn't matter which way these go, but the main thing that is important is the main goes to main, auxiliary goes to auxiliary. That is so that the main battery is getting power from the main battery to charge the auxiliary battery and they're not crossing paths. Make sure you terminate these the correct way around. Okay, so last cable, the S is the solar feed with the Anderson lug on it. What we're going to do here is feed that guy through the same path that we just had before, so it follows the other cables. Okay, so this is where all the magic happens. We're just going to slip the BC-DC into place. Watch how easy this is. Literally just going to drop the cables down, roll it around, and just like that, it's now lined up with all the factory bolt holes and all our wiring's in, and we are almost done with the BC-DC. Okay, just to recap, finishing off, we're just going to tighten the bolts up, but lastly I wanted to show you a couple of little key points. The horn, we're just refitting it. The horn bracket goes back on factory, our bracket goes on top, factory bolt. This bolt over here, same thing, factory bolt back in. The lower bolt right down the bottom, factory bolt goes back in. The heat exchanger hosing at the front here, you do need to make sure you clip the plastic clip back into place. I did dislodge it earlier just to make things, life a bit easier getting it into place. Clip it back in, and then lastly, tighten it all up and secure all the wiring with the zip ties. BC-DC install tick. Okay, so just cut off the last zip tie. Little flush cuts as well, cut these so you don't end up with sharp fingers if you do putting your hands down into tight places. All the cables are finished off up here, and now further up along here, we are just going to tie off the cables nice and neatly, and this one, solar, is going to come along here, and now we're going to mount our solar mounting bracket, Anderson, and the extra fuse holder. Okay, so you've got your solar Anderson bracket ready to go. Going to mount this to the side of the radiator. This here, you'll see new bolt holes and clip locations for the harness and bolts onto the factory bracket. We are also going to bolt on the Anderson connector here. We've got some little bolts, nylock nuts, we're going to bolt that on. Also, you'll see on the top here, we've also got locations, and if you've opted to get the extra 3 Midi-Fuse holder pack, it's a great time to bolt it on now. It's much easier now before you fit it to the vehicle. You can add it later if you need it, so it's going to give you 3 extra fuse locations so you're not drilling any holes in the bodywork of your vehicle. Okay, so we're ready to mount this in the vehicle. Where these 2 holes are here is the 2 bolt holes at the top of the radiator here, and then also the lower hole, we're going to dislodge this wiring harness, we're going to bolt the bracket to it, and as you'll see on the bracket here, there's a bolt hole, and then we've got the wiring harness relocation spot. So we're going to go ahead and mount that now. Now the easiest way to dislodge this connector, long nose pliers from behind, squeeze these tabs in like so. Okay, so we've removed the bolts at the top. We're just going to mount the M6 and the nut. All right, so you don't drop the little 10mm nut, the M6, the easiest way to do it is to put it behind the hole, locate the bracket, push the bolt up to the thread while your finger's holding the nut from behind, start it, and that is the easiest way. Obviously, getting your fingers into the right place sometimes is a little bit of fiddly work. Okay, so when you're putting these top bolts back in, make sure you don't over tighten them. They are mounted back into, they're metal nuts mounted back into the plastic locating grooves on the radiator, so you just need to nip them up. They don't have to be overly tight. Okay, so we've just taken off the earth bolt for the solar feed. So we've got the solar earth wire running around here. We've just removed the earth point behind the passenger's headlight, and I'm just tightening that back up now. And that is the earth for the solar input done. We're now going to locate the solar Anderson plug. Just going to loop this cable back around and then just put it into the other side of the Anderson plug, and the solar feed is ready to go. Okay, so I want to make a quick little mention here. You'll notice this loom is a bit longer than it's actually required, and I am looping it back in here before I plug it in. Now the reason we've left it a bit longer is because if you want to remote mount it on a bull bar or external, you can. However, I recommend keeping the Anderson plug in a drier and a cleaner environment so it doesn't get filled up with, road grime and so forth on the front of the vehicle. Also, if you connect the solar blanket here and you run it through the grill, shut the bonnet and leave the car, it's a lot harder to steal your solar blanket rather than just grab and run. Okay, so all the cable ties along here, you'll see the locations, harness is zipped off, all the earth, everything's finished off, solar bracket's all tight, we've checked it all. Last thing we need to do is just clip back in the harness. Okay, so if you've opted to fit those fuse holders I mentioned earlier, this is how neat and tidy they are going to look and sit here. So if you've got extra power supplies, so you're not having tech screwed fuse holders all along the inner guards and places like that, they're all mounted somewhere nice and sturdy, spotlights, anything you want, they're a little go-to. So if you're after them, make sure you opt for them when you get your kit. Okay, so earlier on the installation, I left the solenoid, the Jumpstart solenoid, it's all loose. You can see it all moving around. Now it's time to line it up correctly. Now the back side of it needs to be flush with the upright of the stainless steel, so you don't want it pushed right in. You actually want it out. Now the cables, I've left all these loose as well. I'm quite fussy with my cables. I don't like them all twist and bound around each other. So I've just made them all neat and tidy. So now it's time to tighten all the terminations up, and then we're going to prepare the factory positive lead. We're going to get that prepared next. Okay, quick recap on the Jumpstart solenoid. 10mm little bolts here, they're tight. The earth is connected here as well. Nut's tight for that. We've also got the nut tight as well on this side. That's the trigger side. Our fuse holder, that's connected as well. That's connected to our auxiliary battery lead with main auxiliary input, battery cable here. We've also got a BC-DC charge cable here as well. Now on the front stud, we've got the main BC-DC cable. We've also got the main battery cable here coming off the back, and that's looping around here. Everything's tight. Now you'll see that I haven't zip tied this fuse holder right down in a tight space. That is because, like I say, you always want to have everything so it's serviceable. So you can pop this up, get inside the fuse holder and change it if you need to. We've built it really rock solid. You're probably never going to have to need to access it, but it's always built it so it's serviceable. Okay, so in the next step for the OEM, the factory battery lead, we're going to destruct the positive terminal plastic trims, and then this lead that runs along here with a solid corrie, we're actually going to unpick the grey tape. We're going to slide the corrugated back together. We're going to use the large split tube or heat shrink tubing. We're going to join those two together. We're then going to re-insulate the end of it with extra insulation here, and then we're going to mark it off with red so you know it's positive. Now, it's a great thing, our kit's a solid corrie tubing as well, so really good quality, and so is Toyota. This tubing they've used, solid corrie, that's why we love our Toyotas, the quality's on point. So the easiest way to pull off the red positive terminal cover is just at the end here, stretch under there, and then just lift it away like so. There's two little clips. They are located here and here, so you just need to stretch them away. The cover will come off, and then I'm going to disconnect the grey tape, slide this together and heat shrink it back up. Okay, so heat shrink, a few little tips of what we're doing here. We've removed the factory cable caddy that holds it in place, and we're joining the corrugated tube together. I'm going to let this cool down and the glue sink into the corrie before I re-put it where I want it, and then lightly heat it to reshape it to come around the curvature here. Now, when I say using a heat gun as well, be mindful of where the heat's going. If you don't have a heat gun, tip is use a Mrs. Hairdryer. Don't say I said to use it, but you should get away with it. Just like that, we've prepped the main battery cable. You see, I've done the red heat shrink first, then I've slid the black over, and I've got all that buttoned up. This is starting to cool down now as well. While we're letting that cool down a little bit more, we're also going to clip off this black plastic under trim for the battery positive, because we're going to rotate it. We don't need that guy in the way. So in preparation with this positive terminal cables, our battery feed cable that we're fitting today, that's going to go underneath here. That one's going to go on top there. Now, because we're fitting two batteries in here now, and we still want to get all the factory trims in, we're actually going to have to trim across here. But what that actually gives you is a nice exit point here for more positive cables to come out later. So we're going to trim across here, and all the factory covers, it allows it to just look OEM when we're finished. Okay, so just before we go to install the batteries, we're obviously going to feed this zip tie through this hole here. And we're not going to do it up, we're just going to locate it. It's just much easier to do now. Okay, so we're in the driver's side of the vehicle. I have washed my hands, obviously. Want to make sure you try and keep all the trim interior clean and tidy. Now the easiest thing to do is to pop under here. Just going to pull the trim out towards the outside of the vehicle. Start at the bottom, work all the way to the top, and it just pops off gently. So as you can see here, just aligning clips and two clips here, make sure they stay lodged in. If they stay in the trim up here, you do need to pop them out, put them back on here. Now when you refit this, make sure you align it before you go pushing it back on. It is just a push fit trim. And lastly as well, just from a refit point of view, see this seal, it's easy to see it now, but that there will go under, and you need to fold it on the outside. So just do that when you're refitting the trim. So we're in the footwell right down low. We've pulled the cable over. So we've just fed that over behind the dash. Now to get access, once we've got this cable over, just up here you're going to see there's a little Phillips head for an 8mm. There's another one over here under the bonnet pull. Going to undo that. We're going to lower this trim down. That way we can tie this cable off in position when the final installation is done. But pretty much we're going to run the cable up, go behind this factory trim just up here, and I'll show you how to remove that one. Quick little tip as well, removing this trim, there's 2 extra little push clips, or 3 actually. There's one here, one in the middle, one there. They're pretty much the same as you did on the passenger side, and you can leave this all connected. That's your OBD connector and your footwell light. You can just rest this down here out of the way. We're not doing too much work down here. However, if you're doing a full installation with other items, you may want to disconnect it and get it right out of your way. Okay, so this trim here, I'm going to use this trim tool, but pretty much you can just lodge it behind just here, and you can just pop it out just lightly like that without putting too much pressure. Okay, so once I've popped the bottom trim, I've just clipped the trim at the top up here, got my hands under here, I've just dislodged it. A little bit of force is going to be needed just to pop all the clips. I'll show you where they are. I'm not going to disconnect the wiring. I'm just going to feed it out a little bit, give us a bit of length. So you can see up the top here, there's one here, here. This is a retaining clip. It is all located through all these little trims. This is a brand new vehicle, so if it has been apart before, it might come apart a little bit easier. Just want to be mindful that you're not breaking or going to mark any trims, so just be careful with it. Now it's time to pick your location of where you want to put your override, your battery link, your jump start function switch. It is a momentary switch. I would probably say put it down lower. The reason is we don't ideally plan on having to use it very often. It's just to save the day when you do have that situation and it jump starts your vehicle when you need it. I would keep things like spotlights and tow pros and all that things higher up that you're going to use more often for functionality purposes. This location is where I'd go for me personally. Just over at the bench, we've got the trim out of the vehicle, just it's a bit easy to show you this. You just, to get these out, dislodge the little clips. These are much tighter than the earlier variants of the Toyota clip in the dash. We've got our switch that we're going to fit to the vehicle. Remove the blue sticker, that's just from our QC. Now that there will just slide into position. Just like that. And it's a momentary switch. That's how it's going to look on the dash when it's finished. Now, as for the wiring harness, this guy here, it's all the instructions and it's going to plug in. We're going to get the white and black wires, and I'm going to terminate them now on the bench together with this little eyelet here. I'm going to strip that back, solder on there. A little bit of heat shrink as well is going to go on here first, just to really give us a good quality join and support the cabling. That's going to go on there like that. And then behind the dash, there's a little stud. We've got this nut here. We're going to fit that guy off. And then obviously we've got the other wiring diagrams as well, which you're going to wire into the switch circuit. And there's one wire behind the dash. Behind the dash, there's one wire we're going to tap into, and that is going to be for our park light feed, just so the switch looks like the rest of them and it illuminates at night for you. Okay, so we've just got the trims away. We're just going to disconnect all of the connectors. So we've just got the trim off, and we've already fitted the switch and run through where that goes. Now, we're locating the wire. I'm just going to strip the wire back, done a little bit of pre-work off camera just to make this a bit more fluent. We're just going to tap into this guy here, this wire here. This is our park light illumination. We've also fed through our cable from our battery link. So we've got a feed in and a feed out to activate the solenoid out in the engine bay. We've also prepared our wiring connector as well. So I'll just run through these connectors and what each wire does. Okay, so we've just got the connector for the battery link switch. Now wiring it, we've already terminated on the bench the terminals 1 and 4, which is the black wire and the white wire. They're going to go onto the earth stud up behind the dash. So we're going to connect them with the M6 nut, this guy here. Now the blue and the orange in pin 2 and 3, we're joining them together, and they're going to get connected to the black wire from our battery link harness. Next one down here, which is pin 5, the green wire. That one there is going to get connected to the red wire in our battery link harness here as well, so that's going to be like that. And the last one, pin 6, which is a red wire. Now just a little tip, pin 6, red wire, pin 3 is orange. They sort of look similar in the instructions in colour, but one's orange, one red. Red wire, pin 6, that one there is going to get joined into the park light feed on the factory harness behind the dash up here. Once you've done the terminations on the wire, we'll just run through them then. Button it all back together, check it all before you put the trims on, activate the switch, you'll hear the clicking in the engine bay. When you push the button, you'll hear it clicking, you know it's working. Then it's time to button the dash up, the interior tick, job done. You're on your way home with your dual battery kit and your 300 series. Okay, so it's time to fit the Invicta lithium battery. This is a hybrid. I'm actually going to fit it one-handed, it's that light. So pretty much, you're going to fit it in here. Put the back handle down, slide it back in, slide it over into position, and there you have it. The battery's in place. Now, just before I slid in, there is a trim clip in the back corner. We will just need to lift this up. Just this corner here gets caught on the, just needs a little bit more height to slip the battery into place. Slide it over. Now, at the start of the instructions, we talked about a rubber mat that sits under here. This is where you lift the battery up and you slide the rubber mat underneath. What that's going to do is stop the battery from sliding around at all, so you don't have to clamp it down excessively tight, and everything's going to stay nice and secure. So it's time to install that rubber mat. Obviously it is rectangular, so it does go a specific way. I'm just going to lift the battery up. Obviously the lithium battery isn't heavy at all. Lifting it one-handed. Just going to position that into... Now there's no clamp on this battery, and if you try and twist it, it literally doesn't twist. I'm not pushing down, I'm just trying to twist it. So that's how much better it is just with the rubber under it, and obviously it's going to take a little bit of vibrations and all that sort of stuff out of it as well as an added bonus. Okay, so factory earth here, we're going to fit the earth back onto the factory earth point. Also, we're going to add our auxiliary battery earth strap. Now it does come straight, so it's going to look like that. However, I've just manipulated the split tube and the wire. Obviously it's a thicker cable, so I want to rotate it so when it goes on the firewall, it goes down and around and comes back up. Now we're literally going to just tuck that simply around like so. And end solution is it's just going to bolt on there nicely, and then the earth here we'll deal later when we're doing our final terminations. Okay, so there's one earth bolt we are going to discard, and that is because there's not enough thread on this bolt to add an extra terminal on the earth location, so we're going to replace it with this bolt here, and that is a second bolt here. It's going to pop that through our additional earth lead. Okay, so line up all the threads, everything's loose, we've got everything where we want it, and before we go and tighten it all up, we're going to position everything so we know we're all happy. Now one thing as well, we're putting this earth on and we're using the extension here to get in here. You can use a shorter extension, just be mindful you have got a positive and a negative on a battery, so you don't want to put anything metal across the two, so just be mindful and very careful of that. Okay, this battery is a lot heavier. This is the factory battery. It's definitely a two-handed job, it's no lithium. So we've just prepared the inside guard. And as you'll know straight away, this battery is sitting a little bit lower. That is because the lithium is a bigger case, because it is designed to go under bonnet with all the extra installation under it. If you're going for a standard battery, it is going to be a bit lower, a bit easier to get in. You did notice that this sits lower and it was much easier to get in, apart from being much heavier and a bit more awkward to handle. Once again, I did have the fuse cover off. I have moved some of this cabling around. Now, earths, and you'll notice I've got nothing connected. The reason is I didn't want to have anything connected, because if this springs around and touches an earth to a positive, and I had connected the earth back here, you would have had some sparks flying. So just be very careful and make sure that everything's out of the way and you connect all your terminations to power last. Okay, so to put the battery clamp together, you've got your two J-hooks, two washers, nylock nuts, you've got a couple of M6s, three M6s, three washers, three nuts. Now this is the top clamp stainless steel, it's 3mm. Like I said, it's solid, it's wide. Batteries aren't going to move around. This bracket here is designed so you can have multiple height batteries. We're reusing the factory battery. However, you can upgrade to 2 batteries the same height and just use this. Now, what we have done, this guy here, you can see the bolt holes. I'm going to put the M6s through here like this, and you'll see it is adjustable bracket for different height batteries. Now, let's explain the other options we have for this battery as well. You see these extra holes in this tab here. We've designed this so you can put 2 more red fuses. Obviously you can see a 3 gang here. Now we've got something as well, by the time you see this video, we've got another bracket we're looking at as well and putting more fuses behind. So that's 5 extra fuses under the factory cover in the engine bay, as well as the other 3 we give you options for. So we've well and truly thought about electrical needs in your 300 series. Okay, so we've got the battery clamp. We haven't tightened these clamping nuts up tight yet. You can see it's just resting here. Now the J-hooks, we're going to slide them in position. Okay, so to slide the J-hooks into position is as simple as drop it down, turn it and pull up. You'll see it there. Same thing on the other side. You've seen how I've done it there. Now there's nothing worse than having to put these in and hold them in position while you're trying to juggle getting a battery in. We see a lot of battery trays on the market that do that, and also plastic support straps on the top with wing nuts. It doesn't work when you really go off-road with the vehicle, so let's get it in. Okay, so I'm just going to do the inner one. You'll see the insulation between the engine and the batteries. I've just slipped that in there and gone by feel. Just going to rest this guy loosely on top here. Washer on top. Loosely start that one. Okay, so I've just started this nylock nut here. You can see it's all nice and loose. Over the other side, just got the bracket sitting here loosely. I haven't tightened this nylock nut up yet, so there's no load at all on this guy. This is just sitting here. We're going to lock down these adjusting bolts here, and then we're going to put a light bit of tension on the nylocks, and all it's going to do is hold the batteries down. The rubber mat's stopping them from sliding around. And at this point, you might have noticed as well, we've specifically designed this kit to work with an Invicta battery with the Jumpstart function if it goes into override. So you just push this button here if it goes into open circuit, and away you go. However, it's got a brilliant app. You won't need to do that. You can all do it off your phone. Literally, these batteries, I've almost just tightened them down by hand, as you can see there, and I'm using quarter drive. I'm not going to pull down excessively tight on them. Now, I'll show you. And same thing. The rubber is holding the battery from moving around. It's never going to bounce around with this. It's got nylocks on it. Don't over tighten them. Obviously, you've got 2 batteries there, different cases, it's adjustable. If you over tighten it, you do run the risk of damaging a lithium battery's case. Okay, so a little tip, I didn't mention it earlier, when you're positioning the batteries, the factory battery, if you pull it over as far to the guard as possible, what it does is it makes it much easier to align the positive terminal back on. We've got this terminal running between the terminal and the battery, so that will come along here, loop back over and connect to the auxiliary. That's the auxiliary post. You've also got your BC-DC cables. They're just nice and neatly sitting along there, because the reason we're being quite fussy where everything is positioned is we want all the factory trims to go back on, and that's why we've spent a lot of time with this kit. So it is as easy as dropping that terminal onto there, and as you're going to see right there, this positive is going to drop straight onto there. This one's going to come around to there. We're going to finish positioning this so that it runs around the back. And then mentioned earlier, I had this zip tie sitting here, it's not done up, and that'll sit in there. Voila, terminals, everything will go back on. Fuse holders, like we mentioned multiple times, it's going to be a serviceable location. Trim will go back on here, and then we will go back inside, terminate the switch assembly in the dash, and then we'll come back out here and connect the earths last of all. That is the last thing that we are going to connect. Okay, so quick rundown, terminated all the positive leads. So this is the auxiliary battery off the lithium battery. Now it is ideal just to have one cable off of this. It is a blind hole inside of the post of the lithium, and the reason we've done that is the height, so all the factory trims go on as well. If you need to come off of that, you can use the stud down here. Now, also mentioning, this is the factory battery positive that we modified, comes around here, tied off the zip tie, it's all sitting there nicely. You'll see the earth's still sitting at the back, they're not terminated. Once again, fuse holders, all the cables. This is the positive lead coming around here to the back stud, the auxiliary battery, the A, the main BC-DC, auxiliary at the back, stud is the BC-DC, and then also you're going to see here this cable coming around back up 90-degree lug to the main battery, to the solenoid. So you can clearly see all that. That's how all the cables are routed. Run through earlier, all the cables go to the front. So other than that, that's a rundown. Pop the trims on here and start to close up, putting the airbox reverse fit of how you removed it, and all the front of the car, same thing with the trims up there. They're all going to go back on as well. And once the airbox is fitted, we are going to fit the front trim off, but not just yet. We're going to validate the charging system once we've started the vehicle up, and it's the last thing we're going to put on, as well as the top cover on top of the batteries. Okay, so now it's time to fit the factory positive cover. We've modified it, trim this little piece off here, and literally it is just going to click back into place. Okay, so we've modified the factory positive cover as well. It's time to clip that on, but before I clip it on, one thing I did want to show you is where we've taken this off here, you can actually now put a 90-degree lug straight on here. So if you're feeding any serious power feeds down the back off your main battery, you can come in off of here. Now, if you do want to come off the side there, you may have to trim it a bit more. It's up to you. So we've left that as an option there. Now, the reason we have done that way is because we want all those factory trims to go on here, and you'll see when we finish in the end, it doesn't even look like we've done anything on the engine bay, but there's a full dual battery system installed and it looks OEM. One little trim clip just needs to be fitted back up here in the corner. So we're just going to fit that off. Okay, so tightening the earth circuits. I've tightened the factory earth circuit first because the auxiliary comes over the back here, and I've just started all finger tight just to make sure all the threads are nice. Obviously you can see we're not going to get a socket on it. We are going to use a spanner to tighten this guy. Now you just want to be careful as well, you don't put that across a battery terminal as well. So just be careful when you're working with batteries and obviously tools that are conductive. Okay, so factory batteries charging at 13.5 volts there. Check the voltmeters at the terminal on the Invicta battery. It's different to the Invicta, the app itself, and that's because the battery, as you can see here, is 100% charged. It's not just going to thump the power into it. The BMS, the control system internally, doesn't need to put the charge in, so it doesn't go into the battery. It protects the lithium. Okay, so last thing, just going to put these little dress covers on here, protect the positives on there, ready to fit the factory trim. It's as easy as just sliding these in here. Lining them up. How good does that look? 300 series dual battery system just being fitted to your vehicle. I love mine. The Invicta battery, it ticks a lot of boxes for me. The ability to have the auxiliary battery and the cranking ability, and obviously all looks factory, neat and tidy, and we haven't drilled a hole in the car. I love it. I hope you love your kit. Once again, thanks for choosing PDP for your 300 series. Enjoy it, guys.